Welcome friends. In this video, we're gonna start to answer that question, how much dye should I use? That's a valid question to ask. Think about it for a second. If you were to take two identically tied shirts and apply one with X amount of dye and the other with double what you did on the other one, you're gonna get two different results. Of course, they're both probably going to be amazing, but they're going to be different. So let's start answering that question about how much dye to use with an experiment. Now, with any good experiment, we got to keep it simple. Also, because we're tie-dyeing, the experiment has to result in something that's pretty cool that we're going to wear on a daily basis. Otherwise, why go through all the trouble? Now, I'm going to be using a dark dye today, but you use whatever color you want to use on your experiment. Now, I'm going to do 3 shirts. We're going to spiral them, and then I'm going to use 3 different strengths of dye. I'm going to go all the way up to 10% dye by weight, all the way down to 3 1/3. And we're going to see a drastic difference between them. That one that has a ton of color, I'll show you that at the end. It's going to be fun. My name is Nate. As always, I do my best to keep track of all of the details so I can share with you. However, forgive me, sometimes I forget to write things down. Let's jump into this. These shirts have been soda ash soaked and spun out till damp and then tied up and left out till they are bone dry. I'll put a link on the screen and in the description to my in-depth spiral tutorial. However, today, let's focus on setting up the experiment and how it's going to work. A quick safety check. These containers are now sacrificed to the tie-dye gods. Once they touch dye, they never touch food again. Also, check for pinholes in your bins. Trust me, coming back to a floor covered in blue dye is a mistake you only want to make once. You can learn from your own mistakes, or you can learn from the one I made the other day. I recommend the latter. To start, a tied up spiral has a flat side, the side that was against the table when I tied it, and then a concave side, which is the top. Now, I'll be placing that flat side down in the muck container for a very specific reason I'll get into very shortly. I'll then use a thin, sturdy cardboard divider to split the shirt disc in half vertically. This will serve as the barrier, the ice container, to keep the ice to one side of the shirt. Now, since the top isn't flat, I'll trim the cardboard a little bit to fit that curve. We just want to do it well enough to keep the ice from sliding underneath as it melts. And then I'm going to secure it with clothespins. And then when we're ready, we're going to add the dye over the ice on that one side. Now, please note, we're not going to incline this. This is going to be completely level. So why set it up this way? Well, for that side with no ice and dye, for the dye to get there, it has to travel through the power of wicking alone. And in that travel, we're going to get those color splits. This setup forces the dye to wick along the bottom, while making it fight gravity to reach the top of that disc. So as the ice melts, that dye water is absorbed directly into that fabric on that one side we place the ice. And then because of that capillary action, the flat bottom of the disc creates these small channels for the dye to travel horizontally. Mini highways. It's very easy for the dye to travel here. And as the dye moves sideways, it will also wick upwards into the fabric, and it's going to be fighting gravity when it does that. And because of this, we're going to get those interesting color splits there between the different pleats. And that's because each dye molecule is a different size and weight, meaning they travel at different speeds and go different distances. Let's talk about some expectations with the dye. I've been planning this experiment for a while, and my initial thought was to use some of those specific dyes designed by Dharma for ice dye splits, such as Warrior Princess or Rattlesnake. However, a couple days before I did this, I had to say goodbye to one of my best friends of 15 years, Rockefeller. He was a shelter dog. He came with a crooked paw. And, well, I named my channel after him. Well, I needed a distraction, and I was not feeling bright colors, so I grabbed black. It felt right at the time, and honestly, I thought that these shirts would just be an experiment, would be unwearable. However, they turned out fantastic, and I wear mine all the time.
So now to the main question is, how much dye should I use? We have this experiment set up. Let's talk about the percentages for a second. To get the best data, I'm going to be weighing the dye as a percentage of the fabric weight. Now, ProChemical recommends for black 629 to get the color on their color swatch to use 10%. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, this is way more, by like double what I normally use when I ice dye, but I decided to do this for science so that we could get a data point. It still turned out amazing. Now, in a perfect world, I would use the same shirt sizes, but here in this experiment, we're going to do medium, large, and extra large. And since we're using percentages based on weight, that shirt size shouldn't matter, but we'll see if it does. All right, let's talk about the process. And we're going to put the ice on. We're then going to add the dye, and then we're going to add extra soda ash because the ice is pH neutral, and we want the muck water to be around 10 or 11 pH so that extra soda ash will ensure we have the right conditions. Now, I elevate my muck containers on racks to avoid condensation on my work table, which there's a bonus. I get to take pictures from underneath, which we'll look at here. At first, you see nothing, right? That's to be expected. But then the water starts to wick, the dye water. Even though there's no incline, we can see the dye travels horizontally through those tight spiral channels, capillary action in work. Now, even in my blurry process photos, you can see the constituent dye colors splitting as they race across the fabric, those purples and blues. Now, you'll see shortly, we created an environment that mimics liquid dyeing on that bottom because of how easy it is for the dye to travel, resulting in that black. Let's look at the top of the shirt before it became oversaturated with water, which is the point when the muck water would be created. Now, as the bottom of the disc was designed for dye to travel easily, the top was not. And we can see that the dye did travel horizontally, but not all the way to the other side, as evidenced by the white space. And we can see the different color splits peeking through here. Now, as there is no incline, the gravity did not help the dye move. It was only through the power of wicking alone, through the power of the water. Now, at this time, right before the muck water is going to spill out of this shirt, I'm going to add more ice to that second side with no dye or no extra soda ash, with that being a resist. So as that water melts, the ice melts, it's going to counteract the wicking force of the dye water, in essence, locking the dye into place mostly where it is. Wow, these came out amazing, considering we just used black. I thought this was going to be a disaster, and we can see that the structure worked in creating those fantastic color splits of purple and blue. Those are the main ones here. And from left to right, we have the least amount of dye going all the way to the strongest amount of dye. Now, let's take a look at the large and extra large together, and we can see that the blue next to the white is still there for both of them going to the center, but it's not as bright with the extra large, probably because we used more dye overall there. Now, we got these mostly solid black radial lines shooting from the center. That was the highway that we made on the bottom for the dye to travel through capillary action. It was the bottom of the pleats. And so that's the spots where we're going to get closest to that black 629 if we were to liquid dye. But obviously we didn't get all the way there because it's a little bit faded, which I love. Now, the space between those lines is the fabric pleat, where we are more likely to get those color splits that you see there, a lot of the purples. Now, let's look at the medium one. This is the one with the least amount of dye by weight of the fabric. And because it's the least amount of dye, it's overall way brighter. We can see even more color splits. We see yellows showing up more, mixing with the blues to create dark mossy greens. It's just overall fantastic. And I love that top right corner and the purple and the flow there. It just looks amazing. And when I showed my wife all of this, she's like, wait, that one's my size. And she yoinked it right out of my hands the moment she saw it. So which one is best? That, my friends, is the wrong question to ask. Instead, the question is, well, when would I use a lot more and when would I use a lot less? And so when we think about it, the heavier amount of dye by weight of fabric, I would use that if you're looking to get a much more subdued look in your overall design. Because if you mix that heavy amount of dye with other colors, it will bring the whole brightness down, which might be something you're looking for. Now, if you're looking for something that's more of an accent black to really offset some bright colors but not impact it too much, I would go closer to 3 or even 2%. I would go even less. And that way you don't impact the brightness of the other colors, but you still get a little bit of that black. But remember, the less black you use, the more color splits you're going to get. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to show you the next video.